As I begin this series of sermons on why and making sense of God's will, I want to be crystal clear on the issue. God does not need any defense. God does not wrestle with this issue, but we do. There isn't a soul here who hasn't asked, why? Why me? Why now? And sometimes we wrestle with this and we lose faith. We just fall away from faith. So I'm going to ask that you receive the invitation right now. Usually the pastor has the invitation after the sermon, but I'm going to give the invitation right now. If you are wrestling with why, with the why questions, or suffering in some way, I would love to talk to you. I would love to pray with you, because this is a very serious issue with serious consequences. And this is what the spiritual church is to be about, dealing with issues at this magnitude. You might not agree with my understanding of this, but we can agree with God's understanding and how we are to treat and make sense of God's will. At the first anniversary of 9/11, there's a small group of us from the church that I was pastoring. We went to the Rough Riders game, and we had a marvelous time. The Rough Riders weren't having such a marvelous time, but we were eating popcorn and peanuts and Cracker Jacks, and we were having fun together and fellowshipping, and I was sitting at the end of the row. And a lady noticed the church shirt that I had on with the logo and the identification of the church. We all had them on. And we got into conversation and fell into conversation, and she asked me what I did at the church. And I said I was the pastor. And so she felt comfortable, if you will, asking this question. She wasn't rude or sarcastic when she asked this question. She asked it out of curiosity. She asked me this question. She said, "How can you believe in a God that caused 3,000 people to lose their lives on 9/11? It's a serious question. At my first full-time appointment, Kitty and I were babysitting a friend's baby, 11-month-old Ashley. Ashley was a sweet and happy baby. But 7 days later, she contracted spinal meningitis and didn't last very long. And Carol, the mother, looked at me with tears in her eyes, Carol, and she said, "Wally, why did God kill my baby?" Wow, that blew me away. Was that ever a serious question? There are serious questions that deserve real answers or explanations. And this is an issue that I'm guilty, that pastors have sidestepped for years. For years, but I wish to address it at Newworld United Methodist Church today and in the coming weeks. Why? I've asked that question, and I know you have. Some way or another, we not want, but we need to make sense of God's will. Now, when I think of suffering, I think of many things, one being natural disasters. Natural disasters. 300 people killed in Hurricane Katrina. Thousands left homeless, and 300,000 people killed by the tsunami in Southeast Asia. Recently, 230,000 casualties from the earthquake in Haiti. 1.3 million people left homeless. And many times we say that God caused this. God is responsible. When we have possessions and we wish to take insurance out on those possessions, insurance on our house, insurance on our car, insurance on our boat, and something happens to them, we call them what? Acts of God. That's interesting. You know, we think, well, they are His acts, so He caused it. Well, I disagree with the verbiage. But modern science tells us why natural disasters happen. Take the tsunami, for example. You know, we all know that there's magma within the earth. And it's on a conveyor belt and it's superheated down below, but when it gets near the surface, it cools off. And that causes pressure on tectonic plates. And then that pressure is transferred to the Earth's crust. And sometimes that pressure pushes and pushes and pushes. And something gives way. Mountains are formed that way. Land masses, continents, islands. But sometimes earthquakes are caused. And when an earthquake takes place underneath the floor of the ocean, it creates a great wall of water, a great wave that travels at tremendous speeds. And when it hits landfall, if there is a home or if there are people in its path, the wave is going to win every time. It's going to win. So who caused that? God or an earthquake? The earthquake caused it. The tornado caused it. Flooding caused it. Hurricanes cause it. Now, I'm not a scientist. I'm not a geologist by any stretch of the imagination.